A legendary Oglala war leader shattered the 7th Cavalry and broke Custer at the Little Bighorn. His prowess was tied to a spiritual vision that allegedly made him impervious to enemy fire. On the battlefield, the record seems to support the myth. Across a decade of war, he was never wounded by an opposing soldier. Yet despite his massive historical footprint, Crazy Horse remains a ghost. In an era when the American West was being cataloged by the lens, he left no definitive physical image behind. This absence was a deliberate choice, not a lack of opportunity. His contemporary Sitting Bull was well documented by photographers of the period. Other major leaders like Red Cloud also allowed their images to be captured, ensuring their faces would be preserved for the historical record. But Crazy Horse refused. He lived with a conviction that the camera could steal his shadow, and he guarded his likeness with the same intensity he brought to the battlefield. Because he successfully dodged the lens, his physical reality remains a vacuum. That absence makes any claim to a true photograph of Crazy Horse a high-stakes historical prize. This mystery is why the world took notice when a contested TinType surfaced, claiming to finally fill that void and reveal his face. A powerful oral tradition defends the artifact. The story claims the image was hidden by his wife, Black Shawl, and passed down in secret for generations to honor her husband's wishes. The testimony comes from Ellen Howard, whose father was the scout Little Bat Garnier. She claimed her father convinced Crazy Horse to pose in secret, swearing a vow to never reveal the photo's existence. There is an emotional logic to this tradition. A secret, guarded image perfectly matches the personality of a man who spent his life fiercely distrusting outsiders. Now we have to determine whether this family tradition has preserved a legendary historical artifact or whether the story contradicts the rigid facts of the 19th century record. To test the claim, we move past the legend and examine the evidence. We begin with the physical descriptions of Crazy Horse himself. His contemporaries described a man who looked different. He had uncharacteristically light hair, a sharp, straight nose, and a slender build. He also carried the mark of trauma. A rival shot him in the face, leaving a pronounced scar on his left cheek. When we compare these details to the man in the contested TinType, the evidence does not align. The subject in the photograph has a broader face, darker hair, and no visible sign of that defining scar. The biological record contradicts the artifact. The investigation then shifts from the man to the technology. 19th century photography was anything but simple. The wet plate collodion process required a subject to remain perfectly still while a photographer prepared chemicals in a portable darkroom. This was not a casual snapshot. It required time, equipment, and a trained professional. Which brings us to the documented movements of photographer J.H. Hamilton and the scout Little Bat Garnier. Archival records reveal a critical problem. During the brief window when Crazy Horse was at the Red Cloud Agency, Hamilton and Garnier were never in the same place at the same time. The timeline does not work. There is also evidence within the TinType itself. The image features a painted studio backdrop, something that would not have existed in a makeshift agency camp on the plains. Peer testimony raises further doubts. The man in the TinType is wearing a hairpipe breastplate, an ornament his contemporaries insist Crazy Horse did not wear. Taken together, the biological evidence, the technological constraints, and the historical timeline all point in the same direction. This TinType is almost certainly a misidentification, but that leads to a deeper question. Why have we spent so long trying to prove it is real? Modern society struggles with unresolved mystery. We want to define our heroes, capture them, and fix them into a visual record. But that desire ignores the very nature of Crazy Horse himself. He evaded the army, he survived the battlefield, and he rejected the forces trying to define him. The missing photograph is not a gap in the record. It is part of the story. In life and in death, Crazy Horse remains what he always was, unfixed, unclaimed, and uncaptured.